everyone, I'm Melanie and welcome back to my channel. Today we're in for part 2 of my favorite fall things. This version is going to get dark, it's going to get creepy and spooky and all of the horror-y aspects of October, which is when this is gonna get posted. So I know this is going out a little later into October than I thought it would be, but because of travel, this is just how it ended up being. So hopefully you'll be able to fit in some of these recommendations if you do want to through the rest of October, but you know, fall still is in November, so you have plenty of time. I have my trusty little ghosty cup that I just got at Target because I needed something cute and Halloween themed, and I have my Harvest Blend tea that I talked about in the part 1 of this video. So I'm just ready to get going. We have a lot planned today. This might be my longest video ever. So buckle up, get some nice coffee or tea, depending on the time of day you're watching this. Let's get into some more creepy, weird, dark fall recommendations. In today's part, we will be going through movies and TV shows like I did in the first part. The new part will be music recommendations, and then we'll get into all the books. We have about 20 books to get through today, so bear with me. This will be worth it, I promise. Starting with our first category, which is movies. Like I said, this is the spookier, darker version of recommendations, so these will be definitely scary. Starting with Pan's Labyrinth. This is a Spanish film directed by Guillermo del Toro, who is the king of monster movies. So it is a monster movie, but it's also extremely well done and beautiful. And the monster actors are amazing and the sets are beautiful. And if you can stomach weird monster movies, I definitely recommend this one if you haven't gotten to it yet. It is set in Spain during World War II, and we follow this young girl who moves to the countryside and finds a unique doorway into another world. So this one's very creepy, but also it's not too scary. So I would recommend it if you're not like a big into scary, but there is kind of gore in it, so be warned there. My next choice is a dark academia film, and that is Saltburn. This one was really popular last year, and for good reason. It is perfect for dark academia people and just people that love weird kind of psycho thriller books. The book girlies will get this one, but I think if you're not a big reader, it was a little shocking in certain scenes, because there are definitely some scenes in there that get you to react a certain way. But I think this was extremely well done. It is about a boy who meets another guy at a college and they become best friends, and he invites him over to his family estate for the holidays, and he gets thrown into this extravagant British life and things get weird from there. So I guess it's kind of Gothic-y in a way as well, but I think this was the one true dark academia. Actually, it's not mostly set in the college, so dark academia adjacent new movie that's more recent that's come out. Saltburn is available on Amazon Prime. The next recommendation is not for everyone. If you can stomach it, it is amazing, but it is definitely disgusting and gross and hard to watch. And that is The Platform. This is on Netflix. It is also a Spanish movie, and this one follows a man who signs up to submit himself to a prison facility that is based on different levels of people. So it's 2 people per level, and it's kind of a social experiment. And they're only allowed to bring one thing with them, and as the day goes, there's a platform of food that goes from the top down throughout the entire prison, and that is their only source of food every day. So definitely gross, definitely horror, and I don't know why, but I absolutely loved it. I think it is so unique and I've never seen anything like it. So if you can stomach it, I highly recommend. My next movie pick is also another horror movie, but this one is definitely not your typical pop-out horror. It is very much more psychological and unsettling horror, and that movie is Hereditary. This movie follows a family that gets embroiled in a sort of curse And I can't really give you more than that because it's just a weird ride and a lot of messed up things happen. So if you haven't heard of it or have been intrigued by it, I highly recommend. And I'm not a big horror movie, and I know I'm recommending a lot, but these are ones that I think are worth getting through. So I was kind of amazed by this one, and this was a recommendation from a friend. And yeah, it's rough, but very well done. And I believe Hereditary is available on Hulu at the moment in the US. My pick for a Gothic movie is also by Guillermo del Toro, and that is Crimson Peak. This features Tom Hiddleston and Mia Wasikowska. This one is not scary, I would say, so you're good there. It definitely has the Gothic vibe. It's spooky. There are some scary moments, but it's not overall like super scary. And I think it was just such an atmospheric and beautiful movie. Definitely dark, because that is the version of this video that we are doing. So weird stuff is happening for sure. But it follows a girl who quickly gets married to a man who owns a nice house, and his sister also lives there. And she slowly realizes things are not quite as they seem there. So yeah, like you can expect anything Gothic to be. But I really enjoyed this one. I watched this for the first time last year, and it is very Guillermo. So if you've seen anything by him, you kind of know what to expect. This one I think is also available on Prime in the US. Another great horror movie is Us by Jordan Peele. Jordan Peele is a master at suspenseful horror and commentary on society, and Us was a weird one. I don't even know how I feel about it, honestly. It was just, the ending was so confusing and intriguing though, and the world he built, or both worlds that he built, were so interesting, and I was just amazed by what this movie did. And so I'm trying to figure out how to describe this movie. We follow a family led by Lupita Nyong'o, and something happened to her when she was a child, and now all of a sudden lookalikes are coming into the world and killing their doppelgangers. And so it's kind of this crazy mess of things that are happening. And I can't really give you any more details, but if you've been interested in Jordan Peele, this is one of my favorite movies of his. This is available on Hulu as well. And last for our movie category, I'm giving you a director and not a specific movie, because this director is one of my favorites and just will fit the fall vibe for creepy, spooky, dark atmosphere. And that is anything by Bong Joon-ho, who is a Korean director. He directed Parasite. Some of my favorites are Memories of a Murder, The Host, Mother. He's directed a lot of movies, so I'll put all of them on the screen for you. But any of these are a great choice. They're mostly psycho thrillers. Some are murder mysteries, still along the lines of psycho thriller, so keep that in mind. And very dark, messed up concepts. The Host is also a monster movie, and his commentary on society as well is always interesting, so I highly recommend anything by him. The next category is TV shows, starting with The Fall of the House of Usher. This is on Netflix. And this is based on the Edgar Allan Poe story, though I still have yet to read it. Don't come for me, please. But I absolutely love this one. This is definitely horror, and it is about the Usher family and all of the awful things that they get up to. And they are also cursed in a weird way for some reason that you'll find out if you watch it. And they start dropping like flies one after the other, for no reason at all, it seems like, in very gruesome ways. So I absolutely loved this. I thought it was very well done, and I still want to see how it referenced the original story, so I do plan on reading that. Now I've watched and read 2 things that are based on that story, so I have a lot of catching up to do. My next choice is also on Netflix, and it is Kingdom. This is a Korean period piece set in the Joseon Dynasty, and it is a zombie show. There are 2 seasons, but I have never seen a zombie show as well done as this one. And this one really gets creepy, and it's just so well done. It's so good. I absolutely loved it. It takes a little bit to get into, I'm not gonna lie. The first episode you kind of have to get through, but it is so worth it. Especially if you love period pieces, this is a great option. This is about a mysterious plague that spreads after the king dies and mysteriously comes back to life. And so the prince has to figure out how to save his people. My next pick is on Stars at the moment, and it is Yellow Jackets. This TV show is about a high school soccer team called the Yellow Jackets that take a plane ride to a game that ends up crashing in the middle of nowhere, and they have to figure out how to survive until they are rescued. So you can imagine how dark and fucked up this gets. But it is so good, and the characters are so good, and we get the perspective of the people that survived into adulthood, and then we get their actual perspective while they're after the crash. So the people who made this show matched the younger actors and the older actors so well. They found such great young actors, and I am obsessed with this show. The first season is fully set in fall, so it fits the fall vibes, but this is extremely dark and gory and weird, and I loved every second of it. It is more of a psycho thriller style show. Next is another international show. This is a German show, and it's called Dark. This is a sci-fi thriller. It is about a family whose youngest son goes missing after going into a tunnel in the woods, and this family is trying to clamor and figure out what's going on. Meanwhile, other people around them are dying, and there's this weird mystery about this town. And it is very confusing, I'm not gonna lie. It's a hard one to follow, but it's so worth it, and there are 3 seasons. So honestly, it gets weirder each season, but the vibes are perfect. It's very wet and dark and woody, and so I think it's a perfect pick for fall. And last but not least, one of my favorite TV shows ever. This one is also foreign. It is a Japanese show, and this show is Alice in Borderland. So this show is also a sci-fi thriller / horror, I would say. This is about 4 friends who find themselves in an abandoned Tokyo where everyone has disappeared in a second, and they make their way through different areas and find themselves stuck in this sort of game world where if they don't win, they die. So they have to go through a ton of games to earn days to stay in this world in order to survive. So lots of crazy things happen. People die in really crazy ways. And I think this is just so good. This is based on a manga, I believe. So there are 2 seasons already. I think there is a 3rd one coming out, which I wasn't expecting, so I'm very happy. And if you like Saw or any of those death game type movies, this is definitely for you. If you liked Squid Game, this is definitely for you, though I think it's way better than Squid Game, and it came out before Squid Game, so highly recommend this one. I always recommend this to so many people that like that type of genre because it's just so good, and it definitely gets the dark vibes for fall. Next, on to the next category, and that is music. So this one I'll try to go through fast because otherwise this video will be way too long, but I will be recommending artists and specific albums that I think fit the fall vibe, and I'll link everything down below so you can check them out yourself if you're interested in. First 2 are artists that I've already done Novel Sounds episodes for, so you're welcome to check those out to get more info on these artists and even books I recommend if you like these artists. The first one is Aurora. I specifically recommend What Happened to the Heart, which is her most recent album. I think it has a wide variety of dark, haunting, ethereal songs in an art pop style album, and I've been listening to it nonstop since it came out. Next one is Florence and the Machine. I mainly recommend Ceremonials, though she has so many albums that still fit the fall vibe, though I think Ceremonials is her darkest one. It gets spooky, powerful, and cinematic. And Florence and the Machine is an alternative rock band. The next artist I recommend is Jordan Rakei. He is a R&B soul artist, but he does a lot of calming, peaceful, but also moody, soulful, dreamlike music. I mainly recommend his album What We Call Life, but also The Loop, which is the most recent one that came out. Is also right up this alley. And I'm actually going to see him in November, which I'm very excited for. I got VIP tickets for because I wanted to splurge and sit because I can't stand at concerts for a very long time. Next is Xdinary Heroes. This is a K-pop band, so they don't dance, they play actual instruments, and the album specifically I'm talking about is Overload. This one gets edgy but also spooky. They have some interestingly done songs. It's definitely punk leaning and very playful, so if you want a more rock aspect, I highly recommend them. Next we have Banks. For her I recommend Serpentina or 3. Those two albums are amazing. She is very artsy, also moody and strong. She's more of an alternative pop dance electronica kind of vibe. And then lastly, we have Missio, who is a more recent find for me, but he is definitely mysterious, dark, and edgy. He does alternative music, and his most recent album, I Am Cinco, covers most of his songs, and they are just so vibey and atmospheric, and yeah, just give him a listen. It's just so good and perfect for a spooky vibe for the fall. And then last category before we finally get into books, which I know is what you're here for, we have October activities. These ones, some are probably more cozy than the others, but I did want to cover what my favorites are. Starting with haunted houses / going to theme parks for their themed Halloween, like horror nights type entertainment. I am not a big haunted house person, I will tell you that. But every time I go, I have a great time, and I love the art direction and production design of these houses and how intricate they make them. So I used to go almost every year with friends to Halloween Horror Nights at Universal Studios in LA, and I would go for how pretty and cool the mazes were, because they put so much work in making it feel so realistic and including all the details. And you know, I mentioned Us as a movie recommendation. I went to an Us maze at Universal Studios, and that was so cool. They did such a good job, and I actually had a friend that was working that maze as one of the scare actors, so it was really cool to see him in action. And I get scared. I strategically put myself in the line of my friends, so I'm not like at the beginning or end, but every time after the fact, I'm always happy that I went and I still had a good time. So if it's not your thing, it's not your thing, but if you're on the fence, I say go for it. Most theme parks do some sort of Halloween style versions in October, so hopefully you have one close to you. The next two are kind of classics. One is going to pumpkin patches, get into pumpkin and carving it. That is always a fun thing to do. And if you are a pumpkin seed eater, growing up, we used to always bake our pumpkin seeds with different flavors, and that was always fun because I love eating pumpkin seeds, even though they're really hard to eat. And then another thing that we do, me and Kaylin do, is we go to Michael's or a craft store and get Halloween themed paintable objects, and then we do a paint night while we watch a movie. That ghost behind me is actually one we're supposed to do this year. That was my pick for this year, so we have yet to do that actually, but well, that will be coming up. And then along those lines is obviously a horror movie night. It doesn't have to be a horror movie, it could be spooky. We did Edward Scissorhands recently, and that was spooky enough. and like I said, make a little fort with pillows and get all cozy, drink some wine, or if you're not a drinker, make a little non-alcoholic cocktail. That's always fun. And feel free to watch any of the recommendations I put in the movie category. And then lastly, closer to actual Halloween, the best thing to do, I think, is take a drive if you have a car or in a driving distance of houses that do Halloween decorations. So we have little neighborhoods around us that we love to go to every year that do fun Halloween decor, and we stop at Starbucks or a coffee shop beforehand, get a little drink, maybe a pumpkin spice latte, and then we take a little drive around and just enjoy the atmosphere. We play some Halloween music in the car, and it's just always a good time. And it doesn't cost any money other than gas and your coffee. And now, the moment you've all been waiting for. That is books. Our first category of books is spooky dark books. Kicking off this category, we have The House of the Spirits by Isabel Allende. This book follows the Trueba family in Chile. We mainly follow the patriarch Esteban from his young adult life all the way to his death. And he is kind of an awful person and does a lot of awful things, but he has some great daughters and granddaughters, and we hear all about their lives. And his wife, Clara, is also in tune with the spirit world, so it's a little bit of magical realism as well. But this one is very dark. The themes are very dark. It's a very dense book, but it's very good and very well written, and I'm glad I read this. I'm glad Kaylin made me read this. So I highly recommend if you want something more literary, I would say, but still fits a fall, spooky, dark vibe. The next book is a short story collection. It is Cursed Bunny by Bora Chung. So not all of these stories, I would say, are spooky or dark, but the majority of them are. There's a little mix of everything in there. I will warn you, the first story is absolutely disgusting, and if you don't like bodily functions, maybe skip that one, because I have never read something more gross in my life. But the rest of the stories are great. It's a mix of very dark fairy tale type stories, a spooky, weird, ghosty story. There's like a random fantasy story in there. You get a little bit of everything, and Bora definitely goes weird with it. So this is definitely a weird girl pick, but I think a lot of them fit the fall vibe. Next we have Juniper and Thorn by Ava Reed. You know I love Ava Reed. You'll see her again on this list. This book follows a girl named Marlinchin who has two other sisters and a father, and the father is very strict, doesn't let them do anything fun. They are one of the city's last witch families, and the father runs a kind of witch shop where people come for witchy remedies, and he doesn't really let them leave the house. And so sometimes at night they go sneak out and explore the city and mainly go to the ballet. By doing so, Marlinchin kind of eyes the main dancer of the ballet and starts sneaking out a little more, and things start happening. But in the meantime, there's a giant monster that is killing people. So a lot's going on. This one is really dark and definitely goes there with the trigger warnings. So please look at the trigger warnings for this one. But I think it is a very well done dark fairy tale. It is very much fairy tale-esque, but in dark undertones, though unsettling and definitely not for everyone. So keep that in mind. And the last pick for spooky dark books is The Bone Orchard by Sarah A. Mueller. This one I think I've only talked about once before, but this is a very underrated book. I will say this is one of the most confusing and weird books I've ever read, but the journey is such an experience, and I just think more people should read it. It is about a woman named Charm who runs a house of ill repute with a bunch of other girls, and she is also the mistress to the emperor. And as the emperor dies, he calls Charm to her to instruct her to find out who killed him, because he believes someone murdered him. So she is thrown into this society and politics, and she herself is a very weird, interesting person, and you're very confused, but then the author randomly throws information bombs at you, and you're just like, what? That's what that is? And I just had such a great time with that. And I don't think this will be for everyone either, but definitely has a spooky, weird, kind of ghost-like atmosphere, so highly recommend. Next category is horror, and I only really have one true horror book to recommend in this category, and that is Pet Sematary by Stephen King. I know I need to read more from him, but this was a great start for me. This is about a family that moves to a small town in Maine because the dad is taking a job at a university as a doctor, and outside their new house is a little pet cemetery that people bury their pets. But there is some serious goings on with this pet cemetery, and later on, after some tragic incidents, Lewis Creed, who is the father, ends up getting dragged back to this pet cemetery, and weird stuff happens. I can't give you really anything more of that, but the movie version of this is also really interesting. The most recent one I watched, they do make some big changes, but I think it was still a really good horror movie. But if you're looking to get into Stephen King, I think this is a great start, because it was for me. The next category is the biggest category, and that is dark academia. It's also one of my favorite genres, so I will try to go through these quickly. The first one is Piranesi by Susanna Clarke. I've talked about this book so much. It is a great book. It's in my top 8 books of all time. I fell in love with this book and her writing, and Susanna Clarke is now my favorite author of all time. That being said, this book is about a man named Piranesi who is in this house with infinite rooms, infinite vestibules, doesn't know how he got there or what this house is. There's statues everywhere, and he takes it upon himself to explore this house. And there's only one other person in this house with him, and he is called the Other. And so this is a journey to figure out what is going on, and that's all I'll give you. The next book is a popular dark academia series, though I will say not every book is as good as the other one. So my favorite book is the first one, and this is the Skullman series. So the first book is A Deadly Education by Naomi Novik. I absolutely love this character in this book. I thought she was very relatable, though she probably won't be to most people. But this book in series is about a school that is filled with deadly monsters, and it is very, very hard to survive this school, but if they do, they're able to join society as magic practitioners. So basically the school is trying to kill all of them, and they have to figure out how to survive while going to normal classes and sleeping in their bedrooms. So it's a very fun and interesting atmosphere. It is dark, but overall I still think this series is worth it, though I will say it slightly declines every book. Especially the last one drags a little bit, but I still gave it 4 stars. So this was 5, and then it went to 4.5, and then 4 stars. So still not awful, but I do think this is a really great option for a dark academia series. Next dark academia pick is Babel by R.F. Kuang. I've talked about this one as well. This one is, she did this so good, and this is the only R.F. Kuang book I've read. Yellowface hasn't interested me at all, and I've heard it's not as good as her other ones. And I know I need to read Poppy War. I say this every time I mention R.F. Kuang, so I will get there eventually. But this one follows Robin, who was born in China and then taken by this man to England in order to become a great student in languages. And the goal for Robin is for him to join the Institute of Translation, or aka Babel, at Oxford University, which is the most prestigious program in the world, because that is where they create magic. And this magic is based on silver inscribed with different languages, and how the magic works is that whatever the meaning between the languages inscribed, the true meaning of the word is the magic that will happen. So I know I'm not explaining this in a way that makes sense, so you'll have to read it to fully understand, but it's not as complicated as I'm making it out to be. This book is a lot about imperialism and colonization and the importance of language and education and standing up for your beliefs, and I think this is just a beautiful book. The next book, I have no idea what to think about, and I read it a long time ago, and I still don't know what to think about it, but that is Bunny by Mona Awad. This is the only Mona Awad book I've read so far. I'm not sure if she is for me, though I did enjoy this book. I liked it. I thought it was really good. I just don't know how I feel about it, if you know what I mean. You know, there's a difference between thinking something's good versus like how you feel about it. And I think it's because this book is literally a fever dream in physical form. And that's why I really can't wrap my head around it. She does such a good job of making you feel like everything is happening to you. But this is about a girl who goes to a school and is stuck in a writing class with a bunch of girls that call each other Bunny. And they're very like, like cutesy, like best friends, very girly, and very much not like her. And she finds herself kind of brought into this circle of bunnies and finds out what they do on their free time. And it's not what you would expect. So it is a very weird one. And I don't know what else to tell you about this. The next two are extremely popular dark academia books, and that is The Secret History in Ninth House, Secret History by Donna Tartt, and Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. I have talked about this so much recently, so I'm really not going to give you a synopsis on what these. You can check out previous videos if you want to know that. I have a whole reading vlog dedicated to these books. This is in my September wrap-up, so yeah, these are interesting. This one is 4.5 stars. This one was 4. Definitely character-driven books. This one, the plot takes a while to get to, so those are my warnings to you. And lastly, also another recent read, we have The Temptation of Magic by Megan Scott. This one is definitely a romantasy-focused dark academia, so if that's your vibe, I say check it out. It has a lot of interesting creatures. It has a society chasing down these creatures, trying to control them, a family in hiding, some art history, and some clues that a dead mother left this family to help them survive, and the murders. That's the gist of dark academia, am I right? And so that wraps up that category. Our next category is Gothic books, starting with The Study in Drowning, also by Ava Reed. This one is about a girl who joined college, but she wanted to join the literature department originally, but that was male only, so she had to join the architecture department. And after some trauma, she ends up seeing a poster for a competition to work on the house of one of her favorite childhood authors. And so she decides to sign up for that and goes to this house in this middle of nowhere, cliff's edge on the ocean. This house is falling apart. It's falling into the ocean. It's extremely wet there. All the things you would expect in a Gothic fall vibey book. And then another academic rival shows up, and well, maybe there's a romance. There's got to be a little romance in some of these books. They start working together to figure out how to fix this house and what's going on, because weird things are happening, of course, in this place too. So that's that book. It's a speed run. Next, we have another house, because it's a Gothic book. This is Starling House by Alex E. Harrow. This is the first Alex E. Harrow I read. I read The Six Deaths of the Saint, which is a short story by her as well, which was amazing. This book is very Gothic. It is set in an industrial town that's super small, and people don't really leave all that much. There is a weird manor that used to be owned by another author / illustrator that made children's books that this one girl is obsessed with, and she is sort of drawn to this house. She has dreams of this house, and there's a mysterious boy living in this house, and so she is drawn to this house and ends up offering her services to help clean the house, and he takes her up on the offers. But meanwhile, weird things are also happening in this town. She's trying to protect her brother, and there's a whole backstory behind the author and the house. So more Gothic houses. The house is also sentient, which is nice because we all love a sentient house. These next two are mushroom gothic books, I'll call them. First one is What Moves the Dead by T. Kingfisher. This one is also based on The Fall of the House of Usher by Edgar Allan Poe. We follow a lieutenant who receives a letter from their friend Madeline Usher that they are sick and they should come visit. And so the lieutenant goes to this falling apart house where the Ushers live and sees how sick Madeline is, and her brother isn't doing so hot either, and this house is surrounded by weird rabbits that don't do anything or just kind of stare at them, and they catch Madeline wandering the halls at night randomly, and so they try to figure out what's going on and save their friends. So this book uses pronouns in a very interesting way that I thought was really cool, and definitely creepy mushrooms and weird pond and atmosphere and very mushroomy, I will tell you that. Another mushroom gothic book is Mexican Gothic, which I've also talked about recently a lot. There is a whole reading blog about this one. This is also my September recap, so I'm not going to spend too much time, but Noemi is a socialite. Her father gets a letter from her cousin Catalina, who was recently married off to an Englishman, and she sounded unstable, confused, nonsensical during that letter, so her father sends Noemi to go to check on Catalina, and this house is damp, it's dark, it's full of mold, the people there are acting strange, and there's rules, and it's weird, and so she's trying to figure out what's going on. And yeah, I mean, honestly, thinking back, all of these sound exactly the same, so I guess Gothic is a pretty standard genre in how they pan out. Last in the Gothic category, we have Marina by Carlos Ruiz Zafón. This one I think is one of my favorite Gothic books I've read so far. This one is about a lonely boy who's at a boarding school in Barcelona who wanders one day and comes across this manor/villa where he meets a girl named Marina and her father, and they become friends. And Marina shows him that every Sunday a strange woman in black with a black veil over comes to pay respects to a grave that is unnamed, only with a black butterfly on it. And they get embroiled in who this woman is, the backstory about this town and the people that used to live in it. And it is a very well written, very scary at times, I'm not gonna lie. I did read this via audiobook, so maybe that made it more scary, but a lot scarier than I was expecting, because this is technically YA, though I don't really feel like it's YA. And yeah, just a very well told story. It's told by other people telling stories and like their versions of the story, so you learn new information each time, and I think that is a great way to tell a story, so I really enjoyed this one. The next category is romance. I only have one book for this one, and that is A Dowry of Blood by S.T. Gibson. This book was way more romance than I expected it to be. That's not a bad thing, but I think may have taken away from what I think this book could have been. But this book is about the wife of an unnamed vampire who we assume is Dracula. It is a letter to him after she kills him, and we learn about all of their backstory and history, all the people they've gotten involved with on the way, and their lives in very prominent European cities in the different time periods throughout history. And so what I wish this had more of was the atmosphere in city life. There is a lot of romance, and I liked the romance. I thought it was interesting and toxic, you know, as you expect it to be. And so I think this was a good book. I just don't think I loved it. I just didn't love it like other people do. I think it was fine, but if you like more romance heavy stuff, I highly recommend it. And vampires. And finally, my last category, and that is graphic novels. And these are both by the same author and illustrator. And these are both very weird and gross. And the author is Fabian Vellman, and the illustrator is Carrascoet. And the first one I recommend is Beautiful Darkness. So this one is a very beautifully drawn story. I was very intrigued because I was told it was weird and dark and messed up, but it's beautiful. So I don't really know how to explain this to you. It's about a kind of society of like miniature people that try to survive out in the wilderness, and you know, drama ensues. A very Lord of the Flies type situation happens. So highly recommend. It's short and weird. And then an even weirder one by them is Satania. This one is about a girl whose brother goes missing after trying to find a place called Satania, and she goes on a mission with other people to find out where he went and if he's still alive. So they descend down into kind of the center of the earth. This is very Journey to the Center of the Earth coded, but weirder and grosser and darker. And so they come across a lot of weird things on the way, and it just gets really goopy and gross at one point, but the art's very pretty again. So if you like, I wouldn't say it's horror, but if you like weird, gross graphic novels, then this is for you. And that wraps up my spooky edition of my favorite fall things. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you got some good recommendations. Thank you for watching. If you made it this far, I appreciate you. I hope you have a good evening, day, or afternoon. Thank you for watching. Bye!